Okay, this is so typical. This is round three. The first round, I talked for about 10 minutes. Realized I hadn't pushed record. Second round, I talked for about 5 minutes, and my phone went dead. So there again, round three. I'm gonna try this again. Uh, Morning. My name is Jesse Richardson. It's April the 13th. It's a Monday, about 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna do a little video series over the next week. Attempt to do a little video series over the next week on how I tan buffalo hides. I've been meaning to do this for quite a while. I've had a number of people ask me over the years how I do this or how I do that, and I'm really bad about not explaining well enough or over explaining. So I think I just end up confusing people. And hopefully, some of those folks that are interested enough to give this a shot and really want to can benefit from some things I have to say. When I started doing this, I didn't know anybody that had done it. I'd never seen a brain tan buffalo hide. I just was sort of obsessed with figuring out how to come up with a buffalo hide teepee. To do that, I had to learn how to tan buffalo hides. So this is going to be sort of this first video is just sort of going to be an overview of my process. Very, very, very short, abbreviated version of my process. What I'm going to be doing, why I'm going to be doing it that way, that sort of thing, just to sort of set the stage for what I'm going to be doing over the next week. Okay, this over the next week thing, myself and a guy named Billy Maxwell, who also tans buffalo hides from Montana, we're going to be each taking and I'm going to be starting here in an hour or so whenever we get through with this and I get some things picked up. We're each going to be taking a raw, untanned buffalo skin and working it through our process to come up with what is to our minds a traditional brain tanned buffalo hide. I'm going to be doing a teepee hide, hair off with the hair scraped off. I don't know if Billy's going to be doing a hair on robe or a hair off hide, so we'll see how this works out. I've never done anything like this. Obviously completely technically inept, so I don't know how this video quality or sound quality is going to be. Don't have any ability to edit any of this stuff, so I'll try to watch my mouth, not say anything I'm not supposed to, not talk too long, and all that sort of stuff. But there again, maybe over the next week we can get a hide tanned. Somebody can learn something. Maybe I can learn something from you guys. If anybody's got any questions or comments, I'm going to put this on Facebook for, there again, some of the people I've met that have some questions. That's where it's been. So hopefully we can pick some stuff up from one another, and this will help somebody and help me too. I've got some stuff laid out around the room here. Back to the no script, no outline thing. I don't want to forget to talk about some things that may be really important. So what I've done is I've taken some of the things that I have, sort of in my world that have influenced me with tanning buffalo hides or will help me explain what it is I'm trying to show, and laid them around the floor here. That way, from my little perch sitting on top of the ladder, I can just look down at them and say, oh, okay, well, there's that. I need to talk about that. There's a lot of this stuff that I probably take for granted now because I've been doing it for 20 years and it's sort of second nature to me that, back when I was 20 years old, 20 years ago and started doing this, it was like little great gold nuggets of information when I would figure it out, and now it's just I don't even notice that I'm doing it, and hopefully doing it this way, going around talking about some specifics, I'll be able to cover some stuff that'll help you guys that I may not think of otherwise. Let's just start out right here. This is a hide that I fleshed. I'm not certain when. Sometime this past week. This past week I've really shortened my work week down for my day job and been playing with my hides in the meantime. I'm calling it my COVID-19 sabbatical. So this is the first hide I fleshed and was able to get dry for my COVID-19 sabbatical. I've got 7 of these frames. 6 of them are full of fleshed hides at various stages of drying. This was just the only one that's dry enough to scrape the hair off of yet. The 7th frame will be filled here, in a few hours when we get our hide fleshed. But this is an example of the hides I get from the source that I currently have. It's a big hide. It's about 40 square feet. A lot of the hides in the old days weren't that big. Ideally, would like to have them in the 30-foot range. but we work with what we can get and what I can get right now. And I'm fortunate to do so because of how well they're skinned and everything, is typically this and larger, from 40 to 50 square feet. And moving along, this is an old buffalo robe from literally from the old days, 120, 150 years old. The Indians tanned this back in the 1800s. It's actually still got the original stake holes. It's a head-on complete hide. It's even got some of the cartilage at the front of the nose, got the eyelids, all that really great stuff. The only thing it's missing is, and it was tanned this way. It was created to be this way. There's actually nothing missing from this hide as a robe, but from when the hide was on the animal, it doesn't have the just the very, I guess, terminating ends of the legs with the dew claws, which was pretty rare in the old days anyway, but it is actually missing that. And the spine and hump and mane of this animal has been removed. This is what a lot of people call them split hides. Sometimes in the old days, there's a lot of different opinions, and they're probably all true, or at least a little bit true. Some people say that the animals were split down the belly and then up the back. They were skinned in two pieces, or that the hides were too heavy for the women to tan as a single piece, so they were split to be tanned into two pieces. But regardless of how that happened with this hide, after it was tanned, the spine was removed for a number of reasons we'll go over through this process, and the two halves were sewn back together. So it actually looks like one big piece, but it's not. It has a sinew sewn seam running all the way from where the tail would have been to there again, the nose, where there's still just a little bit of the cartilage of the nose remaining that you can tell it's an intact hide. And there's me on the ladder. I'm sitting on top of the ladder so I can look around the room here. This is another old hide with my lab Mangus laying on it, laying on my 150-year-old buffalo hide. This one's pretty small, but it's a good example of back in the old days, a lot of these animals they were harvesting were a lot smaller than people would think. The 35 feet, I mentioned 35 square feet of hide I mentioned a minute ago. I think this one is 28. I forget the exact measurements on it. It has been trimmed down. Obviously, it's not the natural shape of the animal anymore, but it hasn't been trimmed excessively. So this was not a big animal at all. This is also like the split hide. It's, for all intensive purposes, it's a relatively complete hide. It has the head on it. You can see we'll get down and look at this closer in a little while, but those two little marks in the head there, those are actually the sewn up eye and horn holes. So that's almost the complete head of the animal. The legs have been trimmed and the hide has been trimmed square because it was, as a lot of these hides were in the 1800s, the winter robes that were traded were, obviously they're not going to be used for leather. They were the Victorian era and before that, this huge robe trade, these robes were turned into rugs, sleigh blankets, carriage robes. People call them different things, and I'm sure that they're all correct, but a lot of them are made like this, in that you can see this felt border around it, like this elaborately, it's not really fringed, but whatever you would want to call that. And then there's actually a backing on this particular one of this real elaborate floral felted wool backing, heavy wool backing. That there again, we'll look at that in a minute. This one was in such good shape when I came up with it. I wasn't able, and I'm still not able, to make myself tear the back off of it, but I will let my dog sleep on it. So this robe over here, that's another old slave blanket, carriage blanket, floor rug, whatever you want to call it, but the backing on it was damaged. There was some water damage on the hide itself. So when I got that, I actually did take the backing off of that. And I'm really fortunate to have, immensely fortunate to have these old hides. I've learned so much from them. I've had that one for about a year, that one for about 5 years, and the other one for 2 or 3 years, and looked at them hundreds of times, and I still learn something every time I pick them up. There's a wealth of knowledge in each one of them. Okay, this hide here, I could probably talk about this sort of thing for days because it's just so neat. I'm really proud of this one. This is an animal that some buddies of mine and I harvested and processed as close as we've been able to find out to the old traditional methods. This past, it was the first week, I think it was the 8th of December, but first week of December anyhow, so it's a late fall hide. this animal is this is sort of the baseline that I want to. This hide is sort of the baseline that I want to gauge buffalo hides by, at least for what I'm trying to do. We know exactly how old this animal was, pretty close to exactly how much it weighed. We know exactly how it was raised, where it lived, etc. All that sort of stuff. So with the hides I get from the processing plant, I'm literally pulling up to this big, fast-paced commercial plant, and there's buffalo hides being spit off a conveyor belt out of a hole in the wall. I've got to pick them up, salt them as quick as I can, make do the best I can with them. That's my only choice. But with an animal like this, there again, we know it wasn't raised in a feedlot. It spent its entire life on this one ranch, just essentially free range. It was never in a pen. It was never artificially fed. I don't even think they're vaccinated. I mean, this is about as close as you can get, or is as close as you can get, short of shooting it from horseback with a bow and arrow, to a hide that they would have been tanning in the 1850s. It's perfectly skinned. There's not a score mark in it. There's not a hole in it. It's skinned the old traditional way that we'll talk about a lot through this process. But there again, most importantly, for all intensive reasons, in doing a teepee hide this week, that's obviously not what this is. This is going to be a robe. It's just fleshed and dried right now. But the shape, the size of the animal, all other things concerned, this is the perfect hide, whether you're going to be doing on the big side of a perfect hide, whether you're going to be doing a teepee hide or a robe. This animal, another thing we're going to be talking about quite a bit throughout this. A lot of people don't realize how young a lot of these animals were that the Indians were harvesting, processing, and using for, obviously for meat, but for hides as well. This hide is right at, if you include the head, this is a head-on hide, but if you include the head, this hide is right at 40 square feet. The narrowest point up and down and side to side on this hide is just a little over 6 feet one way and a little under 6 feet the other way. So even with the head cut off and the legs cut off, you've got a 35, 36, 37 square feet piece of material. That's on an 18-month-old 5 to 600 pound animal. Okay, we're not talking about a big buffalo. If you do the math on a lot of the robes in museum collections that give dimensions, they're not this big. This is on the extremely large side. There again, please keep in mind, this is a 18 to 20 month old animal, 5 to 600 pound buffalo, a little buffalo by modern standards. This is actually a large average size robe for the old days, and it's about 33 square feet. You know, a lot of them actually weren't that big. Okay, I'm going to get down off the ladder here. I'm going to talk to y'all about a few things. I'm going to do something with this hide that I'll probably have to set the phone down for just a second, but you know, maybe of interest to some other people because it was sort of revolutionary to me when I first noticed it. So give me just a second. Okay, hopefully I'm still recording. We'll just keep going and give it another shot if we have to. Okay, the hide I had kind of wadded up on the floor there. This is it laid on top of the quote-unquote perfect buffalo hide from the animal we harvested last fall. This is another fairly complete hide. I think you can tell, you can see the root of the tail. It's got the head on it. You can see, if you get close enough to it, you can see some of the cartilage on the end of the nose as well. The legs are fairly complete. The only thing that's been trimmed is sort of the rougher exterior, the original stake loops. Of those, there's still quite a few of the I guess, the inner wall of the stake loop, which leaves this little rawhide, crescent-shaped rawhide ring around the inside of the stake loop. Those have all been trimmed off. But you can tell that this hide is not, it's not noticeably smaller than it was when it was tanned. So again, obviously a small animal. This is about a 30 square foot hide. The only buffalo, old decorated fancy buffalo robe I've ever personally been able to handle was a Cheyenne robe, probably from the 1860s. It was actually smaller than this. So, you know, I'm going to keep harping on this throughout this series because the hides I'm going to be working with they're atypical for an old hide size-wise. When before the herds started shrinking and the tribes were pressured later in the Indian War period, this is what they were after. You know, they weren't out there after chasing after 1,000, 1,200 pound animals. This is what they were looking for, and this probably came off a 400 pound buffalo. The only old buffalo hide teepee I've ever personally laid hands on, the hides were just about this size. So there again, this is a 30 square foot hide. That's a 40 square foot hide. The one we have in water outside is going to be between 40 and 50, I can almost promise you, because that's what all of the other ones from this source have been. There again, they're feedlot buffalo, and it's one of those situations where I've just got to, that's what I've got to work with, so that's really all I have to work with right now. But that's ideal. Okay, I'm going to walk over and hit on a couple of high points up close. Just start right here since we're here. My dog obviously doesn't want to move. There's the sewn up eyelids and horn holes, and this robe that's actually still a rug or a sleigh blanket, carriage blanket. So it proves that is the head of the animal. There's obviously the armpit and the chap hair on the leg. It is square cut across the back, but you can tell where the rear armpit and leg would have been. So there again, it's not significantly trimmed from what it would have been when they tanned it and traded it back in the old days. This is doesn't have anything to do with tanning the hide. It's just kind of neat. That's what I'm talking about the backing on a lot of these. It's a real heavy felted wool backing. It's just fun. Another thing I'm kind of proud of that doesn't have anything to do with our process here on this other robe here, this old robe, is, if I can find it, this is actually the stenciled name of the trader. I'm assuming the trader that initially traded the robe from the Indians, and if anybody has an experience with this sort of stuff and has ever seen any documentation of that name in the old days, I would sure like to hear about it. It appears to be stenciled the way it's drawn on there. Let me hit this up real quick. Okay, here's the nose. You can't see it real good, but there's some of the cartilage on the very end of this, of the nose, and the short hair that's right up, the short bristly hair that's right around the nose. It actually still got the eyelids with the sinew seams sewn up. So, I mean, there again, this is a complete hide. It does still have the original stake holes. Not every single one of them, but most of them are still there. This is something that I'm not really going to go into that deeply right now, but we'll be talking about it a lot through the process. The specific way the Indians skinned buffalo, an abbreviated version of that for right now is they skinned up the front of the front leg and across the chest, to create what turns out to be, when you put this seam in, pretty much a perfectly square hide. You don't have a modern skinning method leaves these big undulations behind the leg, and another one up here. And unless you put some crazy patches in it, you can't get a naturally square hide without some extensive trimming. I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's a sinew sewn seam all the way down this hide. Okay, I'm going to go over this has probably been looking pretty curious, but I'm going to go over some particulars with this hide that I've got scraped. Just talk about what I think of as different areas of buffalo hides. I call the areas inside these blue taped off areas, trouble areas. I'm doing this by myself, holding my phone, so I've got my 1860 Cavalry saber here for my little pointer. I hope that this works to where people can see it, because for our video series we're doing this week, this is some stuff that I think is going to be pretty important. There's a lot of I guess trash talk out there about tanning buffalo hides, and that, you know, for a lot of people, and I get it. They used to be the same way. They're really intimidating. They're kind of the boogeyman of brain tanning, from my understanding, and they were to me at one time as well. I think the reasons for that stem from the areas enclosed inside of these blue lines. The rest of the hide, I'm not trying to make this oversimplified or sound easy. It's still a whole lot of work. The rest of the hide per square foot, excuse me, is the easiest hide to tan that I personally know of. And I've tanned pretty much everything that the Plains Indians had access to, used for any of the sort of material objects they made. And there again, per square foot, it's the easiest hide to tan. Something else that I didn't mark off here that I kind of want to elaborate on real quick. Some of this stuff, if it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, I do want to encourage people that want to try to do this to focus on to not focus on getting a complete hide finished and perfect the first rattle out of the box, but focus on this area right here. Essentially from where the udders are, which this is a female hide, and these are the udders, across up to the back side of the front leg, which is right about in there. So usually what you end up with on a big hide like this, you end up with a rectangular piece about 4 feet wide and 6 feet long. And you still have the spine and the back side of the hump and a little bit of the hips in that piece of hide. But in my opinion, if you're not making a teepee hide, if you don't need a complete full hide, if you're just wanting to get some experience tanning buffalo hides, learn a lot about buffalo hides, and get some really great usable material, in my opinion, these two large areas to either side of the spine are the best material, best construction material that a buffalo hide has to offer. Now, I've never really heard anybody else say it that way. I say it a lot. I promise I mean it, but it may be based on my own personal experience, because a lot of people seem to really have trouble with those areas, with tearing them up, ripping them, having them fall apart. I typically don't. I've tore up my share of hides, but it's rarely ever in that area. Those are also some really good areas of very even thickness hide. Even though it's real thin in places, it's still really good hide. So there again, if you want to do this, if you just want to get some good buffalo hide, good usable material, it's great for beadwork, bags, whatever you want to do with it. That big rectangle right there, there's probably 25% of the work in that piece of hide as there is in this whole hide. Another good thing about that, if you're not shooting for lodge skins, there's a lot of the hide that, going back to that this all being relative to my method, my experiences with them. Other people may have better luck or worse luck with certain areas of the hide, but these hips, the spine, of course, and then the edge of the neck, it's just not, the legs too. The legs are easy, so I didn't mark them off. I mean, there's no real issue about tanning the legs, but the areas inside those blue boxes, the quality of the hide is, in my opinion, vastly inferior to these large side pieces. As far as beadwork, any sort of crafting, anything like that's concerned. Buffalo has, kind of tying into that, a number of other things. A buffalo hide has about 87 different fiber structures, and each one of them has to be, I don't want to make it sound difficult, but it doesn't really add to the difficulty, but you do have to be aware of it, because there's certain areas of the hide later on in this process, if you work them like you work other areas of the hide, one area will come out stiff and the other area will tear up. So there's all these different fiber structures, there's all these different elasticities. All this stuff has to come into play when you're tanning one of these things. And my phone's trying to die on me again here. Hopefully this is still recording. You got to take all this stuff into consideration when you tan one of these things, but it really isn't a boogeyman. It's just a matter of figuring out what to do when, and sometimes more importantly, what not to do. A lot of people are really surprised at how little you have to work these things per square foot to get them to turn out. There's going to be so much more about this, later in the process of us tanning this hide. But, I really wanted to focus initially on kind of getting the layout of one of these hides, what I'm trying to explain and what I'm seeing with the hide that we're going to be tanning. Here in just a second, I'm going to go pull my hide out of water. We're going to start fleshing it. Theoretically, I will take a little sidestep and explain that in 20 years of doing this, probably, messing with at least 150 buffalo hides, I've only ever had one time where I went out in the morning and was shocked to see something had got at my buffalo hide that was soaking overnight to be worked the next day. This morning, I looked out the window about daylight. Half of the buffalo hide that's been in a barrel of water overnight soaking was laying on the ground. And something had I can't see that it was coyotes, maybe a stray dog, I don't know what it was, but something had managed to pull this half of this buffalo hide out of my barrel of water and had it laying on the ground. I didn't even look at it to save myself my ration of profanity for the day. I didn't even look at it. I just went and grabbed it, threw it back in the barrel. So in a minute, I'm going to go outside, I'm going to grab the hide, bring it over here to the shop, lay it out on the floor, and I guess do another video, because I don't know how to pause and start back up and edit and all that sort of stuff. And we'll see. Maybe there's a basketball-sized hole in the hide or a big area chewed out of the edge, and at that point, I'll go ahead and use up my daily ration of profanity. I guess throw another hide in water, and we'll do the fleshing video tomorrow. But one way or another, we'll see y'all when we're doing that. Thanks. Bye.